Gridiron 360, picking you up with a little more NFL podcastage. Thank you for listening. That's Dave. I'm Bill. And we wanted to talk a little bit here about the playoff picture in the NFL as we are moving in to the last 4 weeks of the season.
Started 4 weeks,
Yep.
just yesterday.
Just yesterday. It's
the fourth quarter.
Yeah, it's the fourth quarter. So let's start with the AFC. And currently in the AFC, you've got the Baltimore Ravens sitting at the top of the AFC North and are slotted just because of their head-to-head win against the Patriots in the 1 seed at 10-2. You've got the Patriots right behind them at 10-2 in the 2 seed, also the number 1 team in the AFC East. Behind them, you have the Houston Texans in the 3rd seed at 8-4, and they are the number 1 team in the AFC South. And in the 4 seed slot, you've got the Kansas City Chiefs at 8-4, who are the number 1 team in the AFC West. Just behind them and currently slotted in the 2 wild card positions, the Buffalo Bills at 9-3, really looking good.
Yep.
And still have a shot because they will play the Patriots one more time. And the Steelers at 7-5, sit in the that 6 hole. In the hunt.
Yep.
Who we got in the hunt in the AFC right now, Dave?
All right. There are teams that are mathematically, there are more teams than this, but realistically, and I think even the last team is not even terribly realistic, but I'll go into that. You've got the Titans sitting there at 7-5. They have an opportunity. They are tied with the Steelers record-wise for the 6th wild card spot, but lose the head-to-head with them at this given point. So they're right there, but they also have a very legitimate shot with, I believe you said, 2 games against the Texans to end the year out of the last 4.
That's correct.
To take the division on that one. You got the Raiders at 6-6. That gap with the Chiefs is sizable, but you have to look, and again, we're going to talk a little bit about this, the schedule they have upcoming. They do have the potential, but right now, the way they're playing football, I would say their arrow's down, pointing down.
And they already played the Chiefs twice and lost both times.
Right. So that hurts
in
them.
their division.
It would take the Chiefs toppling and also the Titans for that matter potentially. But they are, I mean, again, they're only a game out of the last wild card spot, so there is still a possibility. But some major things have to happen for them internally just to play well enough to stay in the hunt. You got the Colts at 6-6. Also as well, they are, again, their needle's kind of pointing down right now, but still within 1 game of the Steelers at this point, and do have a chance in the division, though it's looking less and less like that's a reality based off of play and their head-to-head with the Texans and the Titans too as well. And then the last team, this is really scraping the edge right now and really would be just at most battling for that bottom wild card spot would be the Browns at 5-7. 2 games behind the Steelers at this point. I think the interesting thing about the AFC I'll start with is, while the Bills are 9-3, they have a real shot at coming against the Patriots. They do have to win that head-to-head. That's really what this is all going to come out to give them that. The Ravens are rock solid as, at the very least, they are rock solid as a bye team. I think the Patriots are pretty solid. Even with the Bills game, their schedule is a little bit soft at this point going forward. They still have Miami and Cincinnati, which should both be wins. But they do have a tough game against the Chiefs. I think if they win that game against the Chiefs, that might cement them in there, even with the Bills head-to-head. But we'll see. Their Bills definitely have a possibility, and they're a good team. I think the Bills are pretty locked into a playoff spot with the way that they're playing and their schedule upcoming.
Yeah.
So unlike the NFC, where I see this is I see the AFC being pretty solid up top, but a lot of room to move between 3 and probably the top 3, the number 3 seed right now, the Texans, and the top 3 teams in the hunt right now. Anywhere in there can be a lot of movement.
Yep.
At this point. Just
Yeah,
again,
the
with
AFC, a lot of, if I'm looking at this division-wise, maybe the AFC North, but right now the AFC South is the one that still has potential to be up for grabs in terms of winning the division.
Yeah, and just and the reason why I include the Texans and Chiefs, as I mentioned earlier, Texans beating the Patriots and the Chiefs beating the Raiders. Neither one of those teams, the way they won the game is, and this is where I kind of think there's a little bit more flexibility in the AFC overall, really is a recipe for winning in the playoffs and really winning at the end of the year. So meaning they have to they have to adapt a little more in their game. It can't be like for the Texans. This was, even though Deshaun Watson statistically was not otherworldly, he threw 3 touchdown passes, but it was his show, and their running game did not show up in that game. Their defense was a little bit better, but we've known that they've been very, very inconsistent on defense.
Very tough going into the playoffs, not having, if not both a solid defense or the defense to get solid, but also a running game, at least one or the other.
Yeah, because they're not. I don't think the Texans and Chiefs are realistically have a shot at the bye. They just don't. I mean, it would take utter collapse. I mean, I just mentioned the Patriots schedule. If they lose those 2 games against the Bills and they lose the game against the Chiefs, I mean, that still only puts them tied with the Patriots, and the Chiefs would need to not stumble. Now, the Chiefs still have the Bears. We'll talk a little bit about them. While they're not an excellent team, and they have the Patriots, certainly, but they don't have an easy schedule going through. So there's a lot that can be played. And I right now, the way I look at it is 2 teams I would say are, I think, stepping in the right direction and more towards the surging are the Bills and the Titans right now. The Ravens, I think, are head of the class and will stay at the head of the class. Bills again could surge and bump the Patriots. They're not bumping the Patriots out of the playoffs by any stretch of the imagination. I don't see the Patriots losing more than 2 games, which would put them in the playoffs. Steelers, again, all the change at quarterback and that kind of stuff. That might be the most at play right now, besides those winning the division. So
yeah, I mean, I got to be honest, and my fondness of Houston and my Clemson boys over there playing for the Texans. But in terms of the makeup of these teams at this point in time and saying that the AFC South is the one up for grabs, the Titans are really the team now that Tannehill has kind of given them some life offensively, throwing the ball. Obviously, they're able to run the ball with Henry. He's been great. And you said it in the other cast, like the back half of the year is typically when he gets even better. But their defense has been very good. It hasn't been outstanding, but they are one of the top defenses in the league, at least top 10. Okay, so they're in the top third. And that's something, again, we just said it. Houston, they've had some decent games on defense. They've been able to put those together, but don't get it twisted. They can be thrown on. They can be run on. I don't look at them with as much confidence as I do this Titans defense right now. So in the positions they're in and the way that these teams are looking and appear to be playing, the Titans, they might have the makeup out of all those teams in the AFC South to actually give some teams, games in the playoffs.
We haven't had it. Obviously, because we talked about how the Titans are going to play the Texans twice. We haven't seen that matchup right now, but as analyzing it and looking at it, the Titans are not a team the Texans match up real well against.
No.
Not at all. I mean, with the defense and the running game, keeping Deshaun off the field, if they can, we know like the Texans, are most susceptible when Deshaun Watson is under duress and getting sacked. And this is a team that can go and do that to him. And remember, I mean, their head coach is a defensive guy, wants some of the really good Patriot defenses in Vrabel. And I got to give him a lot of credit. I really thought Vrabel was kind of a lame duck coach. It just, especially if they would have stuck with Mariota, I think they would be, because I think Mariota is that bad. But the resurgence of Tannehill has obviously done something for this team. and it goes very well with what we talked about, playing solid defense and running the ball extremely effectively. So again, this is going to be really fun. What's going to be nice is, usually we're talking about, we get to this point of the year, and especially at the top, and we're going to talk even more about this in the NFC. You get to those last games, and that's where you get that week 16, week 17. Do I sit some guys? Do I rest them?
Well, you're going to have games that can't happen.
Yeah, I mean, really the only team I see in looking at this playoff picture that's going to potentially have that question come into play is the Ravens. Out of both the AFC and the NFC. I see everybody playing
They're
potentially
starters.
even all the way up until week 17 because of the matchup. So the Ravens are the only ones really set up right now to have it not in doubt. But again, remember, the Patriots and the Ravens was that big matchup, and it was in Baltimore, and everybody's like, oh, the Patriots in Baltimore, it's a struggle for them. So Patriots, if they're going to go for this, really want that 1 seed. They want the Ravens coming to them because, at least at this point, the perception would be that the Patriots would be playing the Ravens. Now, I don't necessarily buy that perception, but certainly if you are a Patriots people, I mean, they play to set up for the playoffs. And unfortunately for them this year, they're not the top of the whole heap.
Yep.
So it
now,
should be interesting.
I think the Ravens, they're going to run away with this division because the next closest
They already
team
have.
is they're 10-2. Steelers are next closest at 7-5, and then you've got the Browns at 5-7. But I do want to talk about that 6th seed, that second wild card slot. Obviously, with what's going on in the AFC South, that's going to do a lot to determining that spot because if the Patriots hold serve, the Bills will get that first wild card or vice versa if that were to happen. One or the other is going to win the AFC East and the other one will be in the wild card. So that leaves that one other wild card slot. Right now, the 7-5 Steelers sitting in there. But like I said, depending on what happens with the AFC South, the Texans or the Titans could end up, whoever's not the number 1 seed in the AFC South could take that. But in looking at the Steelers and what they have upcoming at 7-5 and looking at the Browns at 5-7, I mean, the Steelers still have, of the 4 games left, they have to play the Bills at home and the Ravens on the road. And then they have the Cardinals and Jets. Whereas the Browns have to play the Ravens at home. They get to play the Bengals twice and the Cardinals.
Yep.
So
now, mind you,
if these teams, okay, so say,
but understand though, we just want to say this: there are 3 teams between the Steelers and the Browns right now.
Right. I'm just saying from that perspective, if you just looking at those 2 teams, if the Browns were to win the 3 they should and lose to the Ravens,
they're 8-8. Yep.
And then if the Steelers were to win the 2 they should and lose to the Ravens and Buffalo, then they're 8-8.
No, they're
right?
9-7.
They're 9-7?
9-7.
Oh, yeah, that would be 9-7. Yeah, so, but it could be close coming down the wire. But again, that's what you said, and it's what I prefaced before talking about this, is the AFC South is going to be fighting for that slot and is set up pretty nicely.
Yeah, I mean, I realistically think right now 9-7 is a high likelihood to get you into the playoffs in the AFC with who's in the hunt and their records and the records of the 3 and 4 teams. Whereas I'm not even sure 10-6 gets you in the playoffs in the NFC.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting. And I agree. You got the Browns there. They're fighting for it. That's why you don't want to put them out. Their schedule is saw. Again, they should be at a minimum 8-8, probably need to be 9-7. Because again, the other part of this too is the Texans and the Titans, one's going to beat up the other, and that's going to put somebody at 6 to 7 losses right then and there. You got the Colts in there at 6-6 and how they finish out. So this is all very realistic. It's going to be a week-to-week thing. You're going to have to start looking at this each week because it's going to be about who wins the big games. I would say most of these teams have 2 challenging games, with the exception of obviously the Browns you mentioned, if not 3, in the hunt and the bottom half of that conference.
So let me ask you this. So say they both end up 9-7, the Steelers and the Browns, and for some reason or another, they're the two that are gonna. It's one of those two for that 6th slot because the other teams have played themselves out of it.
Yep.
So at 9 and 7, one of those two teams gets the second wild card. Now the Browns beat the Steelers the first time they met when they were at home. The Steelers beat the Browns the second time they met when they were in Pittsburgh.
Right.
So then how do they look at it? Do they go?
I think it's either, I can't remember if it's divisional record first, then conference,
I think it's divisional.
Conference definitely comes into play, but I think it's divisional first and then conference.
Yeah. So that
there's
could
a
be
tie.
an interesting thing if that were to happen. Honestly, I do think that one of those teams.
I think likely you could see both of those teams out of it, to be truthful about it.
I agree.
do.
I think
you
it's
could see both of them.
that slot could be taken over very easily by the AFC South team. That's
Yeah,
what
I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, if I had to say it, I think the Titans are in the playoffs. I think
keep going like they're going.
I don't know where they'll be at in the playoffs, but I think the Titans are a playoff team.
Be
and
interesting.
so that means somebody's getting knocked out. Now the question is that going to be a divisional opponent that gets knocked out because they win the division, or is it going to be they get two teams from their division into it? So it'll be interesting to play out. But again, this is going to get, that's what I like about it. It's going to get very week to week at this point instead of all right, well, we've already decided 4 playoff slots pretty solidly. So and there's 2 to 3 weeks left and people start, thinking about how to bag it. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's I agree with you. I think it could be interesting. It's definitely well, we hope it will be all the way down the wire. I hope that you see the majority of teams have to play people those last weeks. It just makes it more fun rather than that being a dead week. But yes, the end of the season, college football, NFL,
It's dying.
what was me?
The leaves
The
are falling off the trees.
NFC, the National Football Conference. All right, let me run through the standings here. In the first seed, the number 1 slot is the number 1 team in the NFC South, the New Orleans Saints, sitting at 10-2. Right behind them in the 2 slot, and the team leading the NFC West is your Seattle Seahawks at 10-2 by way of a head-to-head win with their division rival, the 49ers. The 3 slot is occupied by AR-12 and the Green Bay Packers, who sit at 9-3, leading the NFC North. The 4th slot, as it currently sits,
Yes.
the leader of the NFC East, the Dallas Cowboys, even despite their loss last night on Thursday Night Football to the Bears. We will talk about that at the end of this segment. And they sit at 6-7. Your number 1 wild card team is the 49ers, also at 10-2. Again, the reason they're not in the top 4 is they lost to the 10-2 Seahawks head-to-head in their first meeting. They will meet again last game, and they meet here. In the second wild card slot, sitting in that 6th hole, is the Minnesota Vikings at 8-4. Who's in the hunt?
We've got the Rams.
Really?
It's 7-5 are currently in the hunt. The Bears, as we mentioned, there's already been a game played for week 14, are 7-6.
Really?
They are on the borderline of falling out. Have been actually for a couple of weeks. And then finally, we have to include, even at 5-7, the Philadelphia Eagles, and that has to do with the weakness of the NFC East.
Really?
The NFC least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Golly.
So what's kind of different about this? What's different about this division? Though I will say the AFC is starting to take a little bit of form of this, is the fact that realistically you've got 4 teams still very much in it for the number 1 slot. You've got 3 teams at 10-2 with the tiebreakers. I mean, again, we talked about this.
Bye week home field advantage.
Yeah, you got the 49ers, who are most thought of as really the front runner of best teams, most complete teams in the NFC and really in all of football, sitting in a 5 spot right now. So again, I go back to this is going to play. I mean, you've got a Vikings team who would be by record 3rd in the AFC, and they're holding on for dear life for the 6th spot. The one thing that the AFC West doesn't have that the NFC does is a one complete dumpster fire of a division that kind of makes this all play out. Scary thought is that you could actually, it's probably very unlikely, but given who they play, but you could realistically end up with a team with an under 500 record getting into the playoffs, which would be a travesty.
Thank you, NFC East.
Yeah. Now, so let's kind of talk about this. Some things that we've got as far as matchups. We've got the Niners and the Seahawks will play each other again at the end of the year. So if all things remain, if they win out until that game will be.
Could be for all the could be for the overall 1 seed, because this weekend you have the New Orleans Saints the Niners going to New Orleans to take on the Saints.
Correct. So
you got one division leader, but two teams that are solidly locked in and should be in the playoffs no matter what, one way or another.
Yeah, and you could still end up with a San Francisco win. The crazy part is they could still be sitting at number 5, and they could have literally the second best record.
Think about this, and I know that the Niners and the Seahawks will play at the end of the year, but the Niners beating the Saints this weekend will move their division rival to the 1 seed. They will be helping
Seattle
wins.
Yes.
Yeah, the Niners are going to be helping Seattle with a win this weekend.
Yeah, and so you look at this and the Niners schedule.
They got the Saints this weekend on the road. They've got the Falcons at home. They've got the Rams at home, and then they go to Seattle.
I would say, getting to that Rams game, I think certainly the Rams would have to win this game this week, but the Rams game the following week could be the knockout punch for that Rams team. I'm trying to look. I'm not seeing the Rams. Who are the Rams playing this week? I keep missing them. All right.
Hold on, I got it right here. The Rams this weekend will take on
they got the Seahawks.
That's right.
Actually, I checked that. This week could be a knockout punch for the Rams.
Yep.
Really, the key is I think the key to this whole thing is, besides the jockeying between the 1, 2, 3, and 5 slots, because the Cowboys will be the number 4 seed no matter what. They are actually 4 games behind the next closest team, the Packers. So they would have to win all their games. The Packers would have to lose all theirs. But didn't the Packers? No, they beat the Packers. They played them this year.
Who's that?
The Cowboys. So who would win the head-to-head? Because it might already actually be determined that the NFC East will be a 4 seed. That's amazing. It could already be decided, that at least that portion of it.
Yes. So they did meet earlier in the year, and it was
I think the Packers won.
Packers won 34-24
in Dallas, right?
Yeah, it was in Dallas.
Yeah, because the Eagles are the ones that beat the Packers. So really, you've got it right now. I guess that fact is, if the Eagles were to win out and win that division and win all their games, and their schedule is pretty weak. They got the Giants twice. They got the Redskins, and then they do play Dallas. So they beat Dallas head-to-head, and they finished with 4 wins. And the Packers lost all their games. I guess the Eagles could end up by tiebreaker in the 3rd spot.
Happen.
Right. So we're talking far-fetched things here. So the interesting part is all these teams are jockeying for it. Really, the only one vulnerable to the wild card spot right now is the Vikings. I would say they are realistically more so than the Rams, because with the Rams getting the Niners and the Seahawks back to back, or the Seahawks then the Niners back to back, is pretty brutal.
Yeah,
the Bears would be the only team I think that could catch them. Now, the simple fact is the Bears have to win out, and they have a tough schedule. They got Kansas City left. Then they've got Green Bay left next week, because they've already played their Week 14 game. They've got to play then the Kansas City Chiefs. Then they play the Vikings.
Yep.
So Vikings do have the Packers, but I think they have the Chargers. This week is Detroit.
I have it right here in front of me. The Vikings have the Lions at home this week. They go to LA to take on the Chargers next week. Then they have probably the toughest game that they'll have left is the Packers, but
right.
it's in Minnesota, and then they have the Bears.
At home, and they're at home for that
So
game
there
too as
could
well.
that could be an important game if you guys are still
Yeah.
involved. And then when you look at some of these other teams, who were we talking about before? We were talking about the Rams. Let me look up the Rams because I was looking up some of the other teams. I mean, San Francisco. They've got. I already went through who they have. They have the Falcons, the Saints, the Niners. They have the Falcons, the Saints, the Rams, and the Seahawks. And who else I got? The Seahawks have they have the Rams, the Panthers, the Cardinals, the Niners. So those teams are both, they should win at least half, if not more of their games. Who are we asking about? We were asking about,
I was just talking the really.
the Rams. The Rams schedule coming up. So we know they have the Seahawks this weekend.
then the
Then they go to
Niners.
Dallas and take the Cowboys. Then they go to San Fran and take on the Niners, and then they're at home for the Cardinals.
Yeah, so I mean the Rams have a rough road. I would say this: Packers certainly have a reasonable schedule. I mean they do have to take on the Bears and the Minnesota Vikings. Again, they're trying to not this really to me because I look at these teams. Think about this: you've got the Saints, Seahawks, and Packers, probably top 7 or 8 home field advantages.
Yeah, I mean, the only team the Packers really have left is that Vikings game on the road. I mean, they got you guys, but it's in Green Bay. They have the Lions. They have the Redskins.
Right. So they're vying. Well, but the point being is the top 3 teams in the NFC right now want home field advantage.
Yeah.
Because they are true. The Packers get the weather. We know about the Seahawks, the weather and the 12th man, and then the Saints in a dome.
Yep.
Saints
At
are
home
not
in
the
New
same
Orleans
team.
in the dome, especially in the
yeah.
postseason, it gets pretty crazy.
Yeah, so this Saints Niners game, obviously there's a lot for the Niners, but it's just as big for the Saints because I don't think the Saints want to play any one of those teams on the road. They are not a good road team. They're not as good on grass. It's just a historical thing for them. Not saying they can't win, but that's going to be kind of interesting. So I would say in the NFC, it's about jockeying for those top 2 spots, and I think that's going to play out probably all the way to the end of the season for at least a couple of these teams. And then the only real shot is I think if the Vikings do happen to stumble this week, and they have Detroit this week,
Yes.
I believe.
Detroit.
If they stumble this week, that starts to open the door a little bit. Again, I think the Rams, just their schedule is too tough. The only real team I see being able to take that wild card spot is the Bears at this point. I have to say the Bears have been playing good football the last couple of weeks. Probably not going to get a whole lot of credit against their opponents. And then you've got the Eagles. I can be honest with you, I would say right now the Eagles may have a little bit of the driver's seat. They got to win this week, but their schedule is soft. They very realistically could win all 4 games, but as we know about that division as a whole, none of them, especially the Eagles and Cowboys, have played to any sort of consistent level.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, look, the Cowboys' schedule, they have to play the Eagles.
Right.
They had the game last night, which I want to jump right into off of this. But they have the Rams next week, and it's in Dallas, and they have the Redskins at the end of the year too in Dallas. So it's not the worst.
Yep.
Those 2 games. They have 3 games left since the last night's game. If they can beat the Rams and the Redskins on their own turf, which they they should do, quite frankly, then it's it's for all the marbles when they go to Philly to take on the Eagles. And keep in mind, earlier in the year, the Eagles came to Dallas and they
smoked them.
37-10. So neither team has really been the same since or been consistent at all.
Well, I guess the question would be is if the Cowboys beat the Eagles, well, they'd be a game up. So the Cowboys would have to stumble somewhere else
Yes.
in order for it to be a tiebreaker.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
I got you.
So-
So pretty interesting. But again, I think there's less, the in the hunt is far less interesting in the NFC. It's more about jockeying for the heavyweight crown.
I would agree. So let's roll right into a little recap of Thursday Night Football last night as the Cowboys went to Chicago to take on the Bears. And a lot of what we're talking about now is based on, some of the things that happened based on last night's game, I think did change some of what we're looking at in the NFC picture, particularly for your team, for the Chicago Bears, who a few weeks ago were left for dead. I mean, we thought they'd be better. They weren't. What the hell's wrong with them? They were in our good, bad, and the ugly, and bad or ugly. And it's just been a train wreck for the most part. And all of a sudden, here they are, a game over 500 at 7-6 with the potential, to slide into a wild card spot. It's your team, man. Tell me what you thought about their performance last night.
Well, I'll get into that, but let's talk about this, how the game started, and then I'm going to go into the Bears. But this is kind of an interesting. It's a repeat of the Dallas performance from last week. So the Cowboys come in again. The Bears defense has been solid. I don't think it's been spectacular this year. They have hurt mightily losing Akeem Hicks up the middle. It has really hurt their pass rush. You can see it by the lack of stats from Khalil Mack. He's getting double and triple teamed. So what happens is Dallas comes in, fed the beast. Spooning the food in his mouth.
Look, I know that we're talking NFL, but I have Zeke in my fantasy team. You know that. Well. Last week in the Buffalo game, he goes into halftime in our league with 19.8 points. I'm like, yeah! And then all of a sudden it was like, he ended with 24 points. Last night, he goes into halftime, 19.7 points. Yeah! Guess what? He had like 15 of those 19 by like the 6-minute mark in the first quarter.
Yep.
And got to it took till the rest of the half for him to get like another 4 or 5 points.
Yep.
And then the second, now he ended up with 32 points, but
scored a second touchdown.
But that was garbage. This touchdown, but then he got
a couple
garbage
passes.
It was all they were trying. They were playing catch up, and it was like the same. It was like deja vu.
Yeah,
there we go.
They abandoned him until there was nothing left to be done.
The hell.
So not only that, they come down, they drive, they score the touchdown. But then, and I have to say, Trubisky looked very good on the first drive, and then, as Bears fans would say, he Trubisky'd. He throws an interception right on the corner of the goal line. It was inbounds. It was a tough interception, but at the same time, there was no Bears player in sight. So here we are in Chicago. We ran the ball pretty well on that drive, and we're like, here we go again. And then. And this is true of the Bears defense. They did it last week too as well. The first drive the Lions had, they stopped them on the first 2 downs, then gave up a huge touchdown pass to Golladay. And then a couple possessions later, they went down on them, and then the Bears defense tightened up. Well, the Bears defense really tightened up in this game. The simple fact is this was a 17-point win. The Bears just started playing prevent at the end. They got a touchdown, and then they got a field goal. Bad drop pass by one of the Bears receivers. But what I was most happy to see, the third down, that would have been the game. Yeah,
Anthony Miller, buddy.
Yeah.
But there was a couple. We talk about, and one of the good, the bad, and the uglies one week was the great wide receiver play. Past couple of weeks, it's not. Gallup had one too that was right in his hands.
Horrible.
When they needed it.
Now I'll say this: what I saw, and I'm gonna because he's much maligned. But
who's that?
Trubisky.
Okay, before you dive in,
let
me interject.
Yep.
Okay. I'm never really that have a lot of input or feelings or thoughts. I do, but like that just kind of drive me the hair on the back of my neck to stand up when I'm listening to the people calling the game.
Sure.
Okay, and so we know for Fox, especially Thursday night, it's
the Sweater Boys. Did you see them?
It's Aikman. No, I didn't. But it's
they
Aikman
were
and Buck.
sweaters.
And over time, I don't really have I haven't really had problems with either. This year, though, those two, and in particularly Troy, and it's not because he was a Cowboy and I'm a Giants fan, because I really haven't minded him in the past. This year, And there was one game they called where they thought he was like stoned. They thought Aikman was stoned. He looked in and he was acting like, But this year,
He
just
does always have bloodshot eyes. Do you notice that?
who cares? I don't care but it's just not been that great, and it's kind of going to borderline annoying. So if you watched and listened to the game last night, Buck said that he had interviewed Trubisky. I think it was Buck was talking about it, and he's like talking about, what he wants to, how he feels about the season, what he feels like he could do better, what he wants, and he talked to him about running the football. And and Trubisky said, "Yeah, I don't want to run to run, but I want to be able to
when
use
it's appropriate.
when I see it run." And so here we go in this game, and he is, and I think it was almost it might even been halftime or just about when they made this comment, and he already was showing he was using his legs again, much like you saw flashes of last year. But it was almost like a feeling like, well, we talked to him about it, and he said he was going to use his legs, and now he's using his legs. So I was like, come on, man, like what do you want credit for it, man?
Well,
hey, you know what?
I hate to
that's the type of commentary where I'm like, so what? You're just like the most brilliant guy known to man, that you're bringing that to light, and all of a sudden it's happening on the field, and just all right, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like, you know what?
It's arrogant.
Yeah,
But, well, you gotta understand something. Joe Buck, I am not a Joe Buck fan. He's an arrogant person. I mean, he got a lot in his life off his dad's legacy.
I know, and I hate to, I know I kind of deviated, so hopefully you can get back.
Well, no,
on
but
track.
but talking about that point, like you say, like, oh,
That's
we talked
why
about
I
that.
brought it up.
If you were a Bears fan, you were talking about this really since the beginning of the season, but more so when they started losing in like games 4, 5, 6, where you really started to go like, what the hell? Like Trubisky was not a pocket passer like all the time. Like he's not a Manning. He's not, certainly not talent wise, but just saying a guy that stays in the pocket. His best games were when he was versatile and able to go. And he's also, one thing he was good at last year, and I think he's naturally good at this. This is one of the strengths of his game, was knowing when to run. He's deceptively fast. He's a little bit like Aaron Rodgers, though Aaron Rodgers isn't deceptive anymore because people know he can run. But he, could make plays with his legs. They were moving him around in the pocket a lot more. What I will tell you, I was very happy to see, and this could be a 2-game wonder against a Detroit team that's not very good and a Dallas team that stinks, but he was firing the ball with conviction. He was throwing the ball into windows, and most importantly, he was moving and running. I don't need him to run for touchdowns. I ain't looking for him to be Lamar Jackson because one, he ain't. But it was good to see, and what happened from that was the Bears were starting to be able to establish a run. I understand that their offensive line has played very poorly this year. And
but Leno had a good game yesterday.
He was better, but he's typically one of the worst, especially with
holding. He had
holding.
a good game yesterday, though, man.
He did. And the thing they kept was the penalties down. They've been terrible with penalties. I can't tell you how many times they've had a big play on first down this year and got a holding call in 1st and 20. Procedural penalties. They've started a lot of drives 1st and 15 because they false start. And they do this at home, which is worse when you can't even get your snap counts at home. What I think was what I saw was something out of Trubisky that I haven't seen, and I don't think his coaching staff has supported him. I would say, again, he's got to, in my mind, to really not bring in somebody to challenge him, like open up the competition, challenge him for next year. He's got to do this for the remainder of the year. I mean, and look like he's looked in the last 2 games. His interception was bad, but I mean, he ripped some balls into some windows. He wasn't floating the ball as much. And I have to be honest, the Bears last year, I said this probably 5-6 weeks ago, the Bears last year were number 1 in the league in least amount of drop balls. They had the best catching percentage in the NFL. It was a couple weeks ago or whatever. At that point, they were the worst in the NFL. And we saw some drop balls last night. You mentioned the Anthony Miller one, and that wasn't. Allen Robinson had one, which is very uncharacteristic of Robinson, but he's spreading the ball. I like that he's starting to get some rapport with some of these other receivers. The other big thing I think for the Bears is they spent all this money on Trey Burton, and Trey Burton has been a massive disappointment on this contract. Shaheen was a number 2 draft pick 3 years ago. He has never developed. Both of those guys are on IR and their season's over. And the emergence of their tight ends, this guy Holtz and this kid Horsted. I knew Horsted from the undrafted rookies. He was a wide receiver that was converted into a tight end, had really good hands. Holtz, I can tell you his first initial is J. That's about all I know about that guy. But they got them incorporated in the game. Matt Nagy got his play calling mojo back because his play calling has sucked this year. I don't know. They've taken some injuries, unfortunately, at this time. Again, I think maybe a little bit too late. But this was the Bears that all the Bears fans expected to see. A mobile quarterback that was firing the ball with conviction. Trubisky has looked. You used the Eli Manning face with Trubisky, and I think that was a very true statement. He looked so lost. Yesterday, he looked pissed.
That's a good thing.
I know.
That's a freaking good thing.
And so I guess my point again, Dallas is not a chump defense, but let me just say this. Like Dallas, I don't know what they're doing. I got to be honest with you. So let's talk a little bit about Dallas. They're a poop show, but I liked what I saw out of the Bears. Like I said, the Bears dominated this game from the first quarter on. I don't care how many points Dallas scored. It was they scored at least 10 points in garbage time.
Oh, they scored 17 points in the fourth quarter out of their 24.
Yeah, so
it was all catch up.
Yes,
I mean, they scored. Zeke scored first drive of the game or early in the game in the first, and they didn't see points till that fourth quarter.
Yeah, it was 24-7 at one point, and I remember that's when Dallas came down and made it 10, and then the Bears came back.
That came right back. That was the thing. It was like, okay, and it's in Dallas. I think Dallas felt like, in that fourth quarter, okay, Zeke got in the end zone early in the fourth, and it's like, okay, we do have a shot to come back at this, couple scores, maybe some, 2-point conversions. We could get ourselves back in the mix. But right after Zeke scores, you guys went right back down the field and scored again. And I really think that was the dagger in the heart then and there.
I think this is the important part. This is the stat line that I think this Bears offense is predicated upon. You had Trubisky throwing for about 250, 3 touchdowns, whatever, anywhere between 250 and probably really 230 with what I think they can do on the ground, talent-wise. 230 to 300, 2 to 3 touchdowns out of them. But what I like to see is Montgomery. They had a bell cow, which worked really well for them last year with Jordan Howard. Went 20 for 86. And this is the part I like.
He did fumble the ball. I didn't like the call.
He did, yeah, but I'll give him the call. But here's the thing I like.
I mean, I think his progress was stopped, bro.
It was, but if they didn't blow the whistle.
And he was face masked before it even. I saw it when it happened. Because the guy, they're like, again, Aikman. But it was an open hand. So no. When you looked at that guy, opened his hand up to make sure if somebody saw that it wasn't. Yeah. But right before that, he had a grasp of the face mask.
Yeah, but I guess the point
is, your coach even tried to call it out. He wasn't calling out the forward progress that Aikman and Buck were like, well, he's probably bitching him that he was stopped on forward. No,
he's talking about the face mask.
Bitching about the face mask. Dummies.
Yeah, but what I guess my point is they had the bell cow style running back in Montgomery with 20 carries. This one was the most important to me. Or actually, both of these were pretty critical. Trubisky with 10 carries for 63 yards. That's probably on the high end I want to see him at. But Tariq Cohen running the ball only 3 times. Yeah. They have tried to turn that kid into something he's not. Now, what I did like is he had 6 catches for 24 yards. He's a spell.
Third down back.
Yeah, exactly.
Third down back.
If I could just convince
Allen
him
Robinson
to catch
had a
punts.
pretty good day too.
Oh, listen, Robinson is the best receiver out there that nobody gives a crap about and doesn't put him in the category. Because
how about Riley Ridley saw a catch, huh?
Well, that is because his former compadre, Javon Wims, because Riley Ridley hasn't been playing a lot and just started getting in when Gabriel got hurt, started getting put on the active roster. Wims went down. I didn't see. It looks like it's his knee. He could be done for the year. But it'll be interesting to see. Like, I like it. I want receivers that come in even with a little bit of clout. Now, Riley Ridley fell down the draft board, but was widely considered a steal in the 4th round.
Yeah.
I want to see players earn their way onto teams. I like the way that they're going. Again, I'm excited for the fact that it's some young guys getting together, but the truth is we're running out of time, so I don't really necessarily think this is a team that can really make this happen in the playoffs. But for the future and into next year, they got to make a decision about Trubisky.
You had a lot of injuries too in that game as well.
Yeah, injuries are gonna be a problem for us given all this too. So anyway, I think they handled Dallas. The Bears have been said, they've beaten some crappy teams. They handled Dallas. Remember, this is a team that when they played their best games before they went on their slide, kicked the pants off of Minnesota. So they could beat a good team, all right? And then we know about the first game of the season against Green Bay. It was 10-3. Neither team looked good. It was one of the crappiest games I saw all year. So they're going to get their chance to prove it. They get some heavyweights coming up between Minnesota and Green Bay and Kansas City. They get 3 playoff teams. If they think they're a playoff team, better go and win them.
Yeah. Look, first of all, congratulations, because I'm a Giants fan. I don't like the Cowboys, but regardless, I know how much of a Bears fan you are. Congratulations, because my Giants suck. We were both kind of a few, 4 or 5 weeks back, both looking at each other like our teams are awful, and you guys are actually able to resurrect something, whereas we have no life whatsoever. I don't want to dive into the Dallas statistics because a lot of those are jaded because it was just comeback time. You know, the receivers, Gallup and Cooper had a lot of yards, but it was all in like garbage time. But Zeke, 19 for 81 and 2 TDs. We know one of those was in the first half. And I'll tell you, probably about 3/4 of those carries and 3/4 of the yardage was in the first half. Again, I don't know what the fuck you're doing. Sorry. I just dropped
What the French?
I just dropped the F-bomb. What the feck? Feck. F-E-C-K. I mean, you paid this guy all this money. Like, what are you doing? This is 2 weeks in a row, man.
Well, if you watch this game, like, what you'd see is...
I mean, you saw a guy in old man Jason Witten who was commentating and wasn't good at it last year. Now back on the field as the tight end. He went 5 for 37, didn't have a TD. But this is a pretty level-headed, mellow dude. Definitely, one of the the older veterans in the league, right? One of the old men of the league. But when have you ever seen Jason Witten kind of get like fired up in a bad way?
Yeah, no,
you don't.
I can't.
There was a moment on the sideline when he was on the bench where he was going just batshit crazy, throwing his helmet down, pissed off.
Yep.
And you never see that.
Actually, they showed it twice.
Yeah, man.
Twice.
That's not Jason Witten, okay? So if that tells you anything, for him to get to that point, just aggravated, and I know it was probably some of it was the play calling or how the offense was moving or lack thereof. And I know some of it was on the defense. If you saw on the sideline, the Dallas offensive players and the Dallas defensive players seemed to have a little bit of rift going on.
Yep.
They were almost like, dude, like at one point the defense was like, dude, can you put some points on the board? And then, it was like in the second half, they came down, they drove, like we said, they scored, and then the defense let you guys come down and score right away, and now the offense is like, what gives?
Yeah, well, here's the thing you got to know about this game, too, is you see Dak Prescott went 27 of 49, but kind of showing within the game, this is the thing about Dallas that's going to be a problem. They went away from Zeke, and there was a point, I think it was from the second quarter, it might have leaked into the third, where they made the announcement that, like, Dak Prescott, and they were still in the game, but the Bears were starting to separate, was like for his last 7 passes.
Yeah.
So when he really took a dump, the game wasn't in doubt. So the point is, Zeke was running. Why did you abandon him and watch your quarterback not be able to complete the
die on the
ball.
friggin' vine?
And at that point, it wasn't the receivers dropping the ball; it was bad passing.
Yeah.
So
it was just again. That's why I don't want to run down all those stats for Dallas, because a lot of those are skewed because it was all garbage time. Them trying to come back when they didn't have a shot anyway.
Yeah. And I will say one last thing though. I will tell you, Amari Cooper is seriously hurt. I watched him.
He was struggling. But you got to give credit to him.
Yeah,
the
he's
guy's
a
gamer.
Yep.
I will say probably the best thing I saw out of Dallas yesterday, and even though it didn't matter, and it was Dak. The one pass he threw
The
to
rainbow for the
Cooper,
touchdown. Yeah.
I mean, dude,
it was
you
a rainbow.
Rainbow but
Right
it was
into his
also
bucket,
a
in the
dot. I
bucket.
mean, like he dropped it. It was perfect, and that
Yep.
window was very tiny that he fit it in.
Oh yeah, no, it was a
And
great pass.
Cooper didn't break stride. He just, I don't even think when it was coming down, he had his head turned. I think he kind of, it was like he had turned around and boop, there it was.
He threw to a spot because it was probably what, like a 30-yard
30,
pass,
some of
28,
30 to
something like that.
yes,
I don't even know if it was that far.
25 to 35.
But it was like a rainbow. So
the coverage was great.
He couldn't have been,
Yeah.
and it was right on the side. Yeah, well, that was a
That
great
was
pass.
pretty neat. But regardless, Chicago wins this game 31-24, dropping Dallas to 6-7, and again vaulting them, as we had just discussed, Chicago that is, to 7-6, and putting them in the playoff hunt. And well, so is Dallas, but that's just because of the NFC
poo-poo.
least. But good, congratulations, good
Thanks,
job.
man.
You
Well, it's
guys
good.
have a shot.
It's good.
to
It's just
maybe
it,
slide in, even
yeah,
if you don't
at
do
the-
anything in the playoffs.
At the
it's
very
a good
least,
momentum builder.
yeah, good momentum builder, and also they'll get to make some noise amongst the guys up top. So
Yep.
that'll be interesting.
Yep. All right. Well, we're gonna wrap this up. We'll dice this up, and then we're gonna get into our Week 13 recap segment: the good, the bad, and the ugly. We'll see you next time on the Gridiron. Have a wonderful day.